All right, hello. My name is Adam.
Hi.
Hello, folks in all areas of the arena. Like I said, I'm Adam. Adam Keller is my legal name. I go by Adam Lyon in other circles. But hopefully we can be friendly no matter what you call me or see me as. I will be using generalizations. This is a general message to anybody, any being that would like to take it in. I'm not portraying myself as an expert or scientist, geopolitical major or anything like that. This is all through my mind, my observations, and complete opinion, and I'm not trying to be an authority on any sort of truth. Although I do think we all share that unique drive, a passion to find the truth.
Yes.
Thank you. And, so everybody, I feel like, has some sort of passion, and peace and liberty, freedom, free thoughts, and overall decreasing suffering is very important to me. I'm a changed person. Just in the past few years, I've gone from a Barack Obama supporter in the early years, like even before he was mainstream at all, I had heard his name and thought it'd be interesting. I used to want to be a police officer at one point. I've actually taken one semester of criminal justice classes. Fortunately decided that was not for me. I can't imagine what it'd be like to live as a police officer right now, especially with my mind now. It just seems like a whole completely different world, but with my talk here, smashing borders, a border to me can mean many things. Obviously, if I rolled my bottle of water off the border of this table, it wouldn't be very good because gravity would take over and I want to be able to be hydrated. But there are also other borders to recognize, like personal limits, personal desires, and then we have to recognize unnatural borders and actions that are contrary to those, even if they are violent and natural actions. I feel like those are problematic because they can limit the potential of humanity, and I think humanity is living severely limited right now. And national borders, as well as other state borders, lead to the most police state of environments. In the name of nationalism, they can do anything, for the homeland. But to understand and fix a problem, we have to know its roots, or at least try to find that truth, whether or not people disagree or not. Reality is very important to recognize, whether you like it or not, whether it's painful. Like I said, I would like to see a decrease in suffering in this world, but I also understand that in many ways, like this suffering, you learn from those moments, even if it's catastrophic danger. All the trees fall down on all the people camping right now. Terrible, scary, sad. But acknowledging truth is the first step in accepting it. Changing a society, breaking down any sort of borders. I haven't used any of my notes, so that's my introduction. I'll be using generalizations about human beings, and I do not claim to speak for any individual here or out there in YouTube world or on podcast world. So with that, where do borders come from? When it comes to national borders, they probably come from inherent need for security. Being comfortable with what you're familiar with leads to any sort of border in my mind, whether it's a border between a state, like a nationalist state, or the border between your house, or the border between what you're comfortable with in your personal life. It's all comes down to what you're comfortable with. Historically, borders likely just formed around management of resources and food, shelter, women, children. Whoever the ruling class was at the time, currently, or in the past, it's quite simple. They just manage resources by turning people against each other and taking advantage of those naturally occurring needs of you need feel safe and comfortable. And really, I feel like that's natural to take advantage of people like that, but also at the same time it's harmful for what we need as human beings. These people in power can take your identity, say you're born in Michigan or geographical landmass known as the United States or Canada. People in power can take your lack of self-knowledge as an opportunity to wage war and kill people for sad, tragic reasons. So they can take advantage of your ego and maybe a low self-esteem and give you meaning in your life. You identify with the United States, then you pretty much do anything in the name of that because you're missing something inside where otherwise you could see yourself in a higher level and not have to kill people over ideas like that. So this type of acknowledgement of where someone comes from can lead to the separation, and also resources that could be potentially life-changing for every human being. I mean, the next inventor of the next internet, whatever that could be, some amazing super-duper robot or whatever, or it's some management of a disease. I mean, that there could be an immigrant or that could never make it here, and the people in power might recognize that. I mean, anything that could help us reach a higher level of consciousness, I believe, is deliberately, whether it's deliberate or not, it keeps innovation pretty out for the most part, but it always finds a way in. It's natural. This is our self-preservation. In human beings and in animals, even in organisms, trees, there's this inherent need for self-preservation. That's why people move from war-torn regions or even a state that has a high income tax. This is self-preservation in action. Capital flows to where it can get its best return. Employees go to where they can make the most money or have the best lifestyle or the best well-being for their family. This is all the market in action, really. It's the natural self-preservation. That's the first law of nature, I believe, is self-preservation, whether it's human beings or birds. Like in the Midwest here we see, or any other northern region in the world, birds do this naturally. There's a harsh winter coming. They're going somewhere where they can live more fully. This is in nature. This is observable in every way, whether it's economics or in, just observation of nature. It's all there. So it's unnatural to control it. Many cultures mix. Very little things in life are singular, I would say. There's just simply in food, I believe that's where culture comes out the most. And really, in America at least, there's many ways to experience culture, and I believe this is human beings just wanting to experience something other than what they're familiar with. The first time you try a food from some place you've never been, you have to step over some sort of comfort level. And that's just a reflection of different societies coming together, creating culture. And of course, there's threats to cultures coming together, whether it's maybe a lack of human decency when it comes to, rape or murder, but those things exist even in very nationalistic places. One thing I do find ironic, people talk about cultural appropriation often. I don't do that, and I don't really associate with people, but I hear this happens. I see it as an influence saying to a person, I appreciate who you are in your history. So thank you for bringing that to the table. I find that very valuable. Someone else might see that as, well, you're mocking their culture, but really all that is a high appreciation for them as a person and their history. And I just find that ironic regarding cultural appropriation. But I want to see people happy. I want people to be uncomfortable with what they might experience, because that's how they might grow. Even on the individual level, there's so much value on interacting with other people. Solitary confinement in prisons is one of the worst punishments levied. And why is that? Because they know they can rip out your heart and soul if you don't interact with other people. They're restricting you. They're placing a border over you. So it's really healthy. This fest in general. It's a camping festival based on freedom, but there's trillions or even countless ideas being exchanged. And I can't even begin to describe how inspiring that is. To know that so many people are experiencing their unique reality, and not all of them, but some of them are going to come back next year and challenge themselves and maybe make one change in their life to become a better person, or love themselves in a way to where they can see a fault but still accept it, but then see how they can change themselves. I'm not sure how scientific this is or even relevant, but, well, it is relevant, but I don't know what the source is per se, but I've heard that you become the the 5 people you interact with, you become them in a way. That's natural vulnerability, really. I think it's natural to take on personality changes and ways you survive by seeing something and appreciating that. Back to multiculturalism on an individual level. If you see something that's really cool, and you have so much appreciation for it, you put it in your life. And that's just smashing the border from something that wasn't so familiar before, but when you find value in someone you appreciate, then it becomes you. I believe we become better individuals when we let this influence from other people come in. Obviously, there are harmful influences, but if we can have an acknowledgement that all life is a paradigm and a balance, and we're not taking on harmful behaviors that we see in other people, and we live the way we do, then it just mixing people and interacting with as many people as possible, there is not a lot of harm in that. It's completely natural. You can't control it. I'm very hopeful because technology and just my observation that nature finds a way. I think that immigration on a larger level is just completely natural. And whatever happens in the end, I accept it. I'm okay with everything in the world because I know that that's how it's supposed to go. This acceptance can lead to a lot of happiness. It can also be scary, but if you can accept that things can be influenced you, but ultimately nature is in control, then we're not like politicians. We're not trying to change reality. They try to regulate reality, really. They don't like this about a certain person or a group of people or whatever else. And whether or not it's about control of resources, ruling class, that's a whole nother discussion. But so right now, I think the mic's open. Maybe I want 1 or 2 people to tell me why they want freedom. Just 1 sentence at most. How about Aaron? I'm volunteering you.
I was volunteering.
Come on up to the black mic there. Let me widen up the camera shot.
I'd say that the number 1 driver for freedom is just for me and the people I love to be able to live in peace and a desire for harmony. I'd say that's my number 1 driver is to have peace in my life and peace for the people that I love.
Okay. And so, I believe that all reasons, any it's not really relevant. I wanted to conduct a poll regarding immigration and then even have maybe more people say, but it doesn't matter why someone wants freedom. I believe it's the first law of nature, self-preservation. I believe in that, like, in my soul. So once we can understand that, even people that might be seen as our enemies, they also won't have that need of self-preservation, and we can have a greater understanding. And again, this isn't a message for voluntarists or libertarians or whatever you may call yourself. This is for anybody. Human beings.
Human freedom.
Well, yes, exactly. Self-preservation. If I want to preserve myself, and I recognize that Joe here wants that as well, we're more likely to live in peace and prosper, I would say.
Yeah. And you talk about self-preservation, and I think the largest impact that freedom can have on our lives is economic freedom, or just the economic impacts of freedom. Just to give, I don't want to make this into a political thing, but just for example's sake, I will mention a political thing that happened. Obamacare has crushed the recovery from the previous recession, and this has affected millions of people. It has destroyed millions of people's ability to self-preserve. And this is a pretty small thing. Imagine, this is like one law. Imagine like the thousands of pages of laws that we could stack up on this stage that have been put in place over the last 200 years, and the amount of economic prosperity that has been squashed the world over because of the lack of freedom that is in the world. Poverty, there's 1 billion people who are having a hard time feeding themselves, that I believe, and evidence has shown, that absolutely they would not have a hard time feeding themselves if not for their economic opportunities being squashed by the coercive operations that is the state. And I think everything is important, and I don't want to undermine anybody else's vision of what they hope to gain from freedom, but I think that this is the most important, the most important impact that freedom will bring to the lives of the people. And even if you're already someone who's doing quite well, like, maybe you live in a 3-bedroom house and you have food on your table every single day, you have a nice car in the driveway, and you can drive to work every day. Imagine the impact that freedom could bring to your life if you could double your productivity without having to, not just double your productivity, but remove, actually freedom will increase your productivity because of the innovation that is squashed, but also the parasitism that can be removed from your life. If you could do that, what if you could have the same lifestyle that you have now, but work half as often and spend all that time with your children and your family and your friends and around bonfires and doing things like we're doing right now? Or, maybe you can't afford to have a 3-bedroom house and a family, and maybe you can't even afford to have kids. Maybe you could if you were free. So I just feel like this is a massive, people who study economics are heartless and wear quants or whatever, and we don't have feelings, but economics is really an emotional study, and I think it's extraordinarily important to the lives of everyone on earth.
Yeah, everything on earth, freedom is important to. I think environments where consent and resources they flourish the most. And oftentimes, environments where consent and resources are together, it's even more freedom. Just as an example, in nature, a very untouched forest or a garden you let your nature take over your lawn, it flourishes. It might not be the best for pest management or whatever small, little, minuscule problem that human beings might have with it, it's going to flourish because there's no coercion involved. Freedom is flourishing, where consent is involved. So, I mean, I agree with you. That's the basis. Management of resources, not micromanaging it from a top-down approach or even trying to use any sort of domination system that anybody, even if you're doing well, you would flourish even more. So I agree with that, Joe. See. Like I said before, capital flows where it can get its best return. Did want to touch on another thing on an individual level is if you're in a relationship that's cancerous to you, you leave if you can. If you're a rat in a cage, you want out. I mean, I just want to point out that Joe was talking about laws. We could stack them on the stage and it might not even be enough room. Those are all limits on what's natural, in my opinion. I think it does arise from those natural needs of safety, but just they're often misdirected results of people that aren't in touch with what they want because they see a bigger picture of what they've been told. A box has been placed over their mind, and this can affect their relationships or their life experience. So, like, as human beings, we tend to place roles on people like a waiter or a cashier. We see them as that. And then you don't feel this genuine human connection. I see it mostly like, how you doing? You'll say to someone. I'm not sure if most people care when they ask that, especially in the role situation, this box, this border we place around people. And I can understand at a restaurant when you just want to eat. You go in hungry and that's that. But there's this fine balance to where that's a human being just trying to preserve themselves. And bit by bit, I think we can abolish a border on a personal level, and that can really change the world. If more people are happy, there's less suffering. And if there's less suffering, I believe we won't try to impose arbitrary borders on other people. And I say we as human beings, not us as individuals, of course. So what can we do about it besides maybe that one or two examples of like having a more genuine relationship in everyday activities like going to a restaurant or buying soda from a cashier at a gas station? I would like to interact and be surrounded by people that are idealists to idealists. And what I mean by is I want all these idealists over here in the forest that are camping and talking about this ideal world of freedom. I want to interact with other people that are seen as dreamers to those people. I think there's so many dimensions human beings can take, and I can't put an arbitrary label on how far we came, but I don't think it's that far. And we could never see a borderless world unless it's some sort of United Nations result of inevitable uprisings in major cities, and the UN steps up and creates a national or international liberated front for justice. I don't think we're going to see a borderless world unless that sort of situation happens and everything's United Nations, international government. I don't think we're going to see the state go away in our lifetimes. I don't think patriotism, I think nationalism and the pride and the violence that surrounds it, people are starting to see through it. I'm a little bit hopeful in that area. But I'm also realistic, and I accept that I don't know if we're ever going to see a borderless world. So what can I do right now other than be more authentic and see if I have limitations on myself, can I expect the world to change and not have limitations? We live in this big, wide open, beautiful world, and I think open, free minds can lead to a more open and free world. And all we can do is just accept the reality of what is and be at peace with that. And always try to have a little bit of understanding of where other people are coming from with that self-preservation. I'm not going to get too specific about roles. I believe people here have an understanding of that, but I mean, bosses, parents, exes, experiences you've had with other people create this idea of what a future experience might be like. Or I can't do this with my boss because, well, they're my boss, you know. Or my ex, I can't. As soon as you might hear your ex's name, you have this feeling, and that's natural in many ways. That's probably rooted in your self-preservation. But overall, I think we are thinking human beings. I think every human being has the potential to see through an experience and not mold their expectations of an experience on that past or on that person or on that whatever situation. I think this leads to reactions, and reactions are actions that kind of create the world we live in. Setting your intentions for the world is important, even if it's just inside yourself. You don't have to be some amazing speaker or writer or whatever else. You can take every life moment as a chance to learn something. I'd like to challenge anybody right here or watching this in the future. I mean, are you your highest self right now? I myself, I know I'm not. I mean, I'm not here to preach. Like I said, I'm no authority. I recognize stuff within me where I need to, if I really love myself, if I really want to be free or other people to be free, you need to recognize you might not be your high self. And like I said, humanity has set limits on itself, and it's a little bit sad, but at the same time, it's natural. So you can't become overly obsessed with that. We tend, as human beings, like I said, past experiences really stick around in your head. And I myself am trying to change that about how I approach life and have this vision of how this moment matters. And really, I'm not telling you what to do or anyone else. I mean, no one's figured out life. No one's figured out how to get out alive. I know that much. Everyone fails at some point. There's this gray area of what's right and wrong, and so people believe other things. But I believe it can be seen that setting limits on the other people and ourselves has harmful consequences. One of my favorite movies, V for Vendetta, says that words offer the means to meaning, and for those who will listen, the enunciation of truth. I like that. It's always been one of my favorite quotes, but what are words without action? It's just noise. We just make these sounds with our mouth, and it's kind of weird, I think. The whole communicate, like, what do words mean if you don't do anything? I believe in freedom. I believe that borders should not exist, but blah, blah, blah. Some of us will change our lives in one major way. Some of us won't, and that's okay. I'm here to share this information because I felt like it was the time to do so. One thing I've noticed is a message can be accepted differently depending on who the presenter is. If I was Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton or a cop, no one would be sitting here listening. I mean, they wouldn't want to hear it, even if it was the exact same words. And that's where it comes back to every experience can be some sort of lesson, even if it is inherently violent or harmful or really sad and it took years of your life. So when it comes to things people are scared of when it comes to immigration, is usually, nationalism or following the law, or if someone doesn't like another person, could be through their race or their sex. I think it's due to them just being comfortable with their surroundings, and this is again where it comes back to this could be a result of people doing comfortable things, living comfortable lives because they don't need to change. It would be really uncomfortable for a lot of people if national borders were gone tomorrow. It would be uncomfortable if someone lost their life or their job for other people. But we can change that if we can. The whole idea of being uncomfortable for change, we can become comfortable with that. And I think routine, what you're familiar with, you could just make a new routine. You got a question, Joe?
Yeah, I just think he said something powerful there, and I just want to highlight being comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Right, and that kind of just came out lollygate. I mean, I stumbled over it a bit, but I appreciate you pointing that out. And when I say that being comfortable with, that's the new normal. I mean, people are scared of things that aren't normal. Well, what happens when it becomes more accepted? It's usually a result of it becoming normal, more people doing it. And obviously it depends on your crowd, but accepting something as the new normal, right, you become comfortable with it. And I imagine immigration would be accepted a lot more if that was normal, if we were just like the birds that travel south, And that's just, can you imagine if the state tried to regulate that? And I'm not trying to give them ideas or anything. I'm sure there could be an anecdotal thing. Maybe they have tried to test them for whatever disease they might take south or whatever. But, it's a simple comparison, but that's just the simple self-preservation in action. And how ridiculous that the state is for trying to control that.
We'll build a wall to stop those birds.
Right.
Oh, what about those monarch butterflies?
They're all
crazy too.
locusts.
So, like I said, I'm not telling anyone to do anything. I'm inviting you to examine what your ideas are. You could be wrong, God forbid. You could be wrong. Even if it's something as simple as the voluntaryist message. All interaction should be voluntary. I don't think most people would see that as wrong, but once we reach that conclusion, we, as whatever we want to call ourselves, anarchists, we are very resentful, defensive to other ideas. And that can lead to separation, I think. So we can acknowledge our own faults and love and improve upon our strengths. And I think that's how we, if we're ever going to see a borderless world, we can at least stop imposing those borders on ourselves. That's pretty much what I have. I had some more things, but they got out of order somehow. I'll open it up to questions, comments about me, about this, whatever. No borders, let's go. If anyone has them. No questions?
We have
David has a question?
I don't think it's a question, it's more like a comment, because I want to say I really appreciate your talk. Feel very grateful, and just knowing about your existence makes my life more happy, and I feel really safe when I'm close to you. And I'm opening my borders to you. Whenever you want to come close and let's talk, and I'm willing to talk to you.
And I love that you've shared that with me, and I extend that gratitude very much so. And thank you for coming up here and using the microphone so the whole world could hear that.
Kind of like to add the same sentiment. I think I probably met you 3 or 4 years ago online and started chatting with you and got connected with MPLC when I was still living in California, and I saw you kind of evolve over time, and I found myself going in a very similar direction. I think I went through a period where, okay, I figured out the state sucks, and anarchy happens to be the answer for me. And then I went through this bitterness phase, you know, I watched too many cop block videos and see black people getting shot and beat, and you know, I mean, you watch so much of that, and for me, I just feel like I need to scrub my eyes, and I just appreciate, you know, the peace and what you've brought into my life, and just want to say thanks.
You're welcome, Aaron, and thanks for sharing that with me. Yes, like I said, evolution. I think people go from being angry to sad, and then they see a little bit of hope and knowing that they can work on themselves. And whether we like it or not, I mean, a person with a badge and a uniform could pop someone out there right now, and what are we going to do? Show some cell phone cameras, and then what's going to happen? In the 90s, they got away from, you know, on video, acquitted. So there's a lot of hurdles to jump. But I think we're wearing ourselves out by jumping those hurdles in a lot of situations. But again, I'm not telling people what to do. There's a mosquito up here.
He's a fan.
Yeah.
Maybe we stop jumping the hurdles and just run through them. At some point, when there's enough to push them over.
Yeah, we could get hurt in a lot of ways. We're tripping over those hurdles. I mean, like cut off our knees and then we can't even walk. But, I mean, eventually that's going to happen. That's why I'm hopeful, because even if it's not in my lifetime, people are going to run through those hurdles because...
Well, I'm thinking of like what you were talking about with the birds. You asked, imagine what would happen if the state tried to regulate the migration of birds. The birds wouldn't listen. And the question is, what if the people wouldn't listen?
Eventually, it would just be accepted. I mean, we become comfortable with that, and which makes us uncomfortable.
I have a question for you, and I hope you are willing to answer that now. I feel very scared in interacting with people who represent the state, for example, cops. And that's why I'm interested in why you at some point in your life wanted to join the police force. I don't know what your thoughts were, so that I can understand the motivation better.
Well, somewhere in my teens, I don't know. I do have a lot of experience in private security, so I did go in that direction a little bit, but not in the same way, thankfully. Helping people, right? Just being the person that they call if they're in trouble and feeling unsafe. There could have been a little bit of ego there, like, okay, they're gonna call me. And like even, there could be even like like a shark, you know, like maybe that ego within me would get some adrenaline off of becoming I didn't think of it in terms of an agent of the state. I just saw laws of these things exist because they exist, and so they exist, right? And they are enforced. I didn't question that. Like I said, I voted for Barack Obama in 2008. Government was just what people do, and bad guys go to prison or whatever else, you know. I did question laws back then, but I think I was an idealist then, like I could be a good cop, which I believe good cops do exist, but it would be probably burnt out knowing how I am, and I think my heart would be tested plenty, so I'm fortunate that it didn't last for more than a semester, and even in that semester I heard some uncomfortable things.
This American Life did an interview with this guy who attempted to be a good cop. And this interview was like 45 minutes long. If you Google it, it is, if you Google, I have a tape recorder in my pocket and I'm unhappy to hear you or something like that. Google stuff like that. You'll find it. This American Life. I'll see if I can put a link in the bottom down below. They interviewed this guy who tried to be a good cop, and it's like a 45-minute interview, and it never gets old. Like, as the interview goes on, it just gets more and more ridiculous. What happened to this guy who was trying to be a good person? He believed that being a police officer